Hello and welcome back to the Content Podcast. It was going to be a busy summer for Manchester United, and rightly so. And now Andre Onana, the new goalkeeper, the new era for Manchester United is about to begin. The club have confirmed he is the latest player to join Manchester United. And I thought to myself, what individual can I get on to really give a background, to really, bring the hopes up of Manchester United fans way too high as they've always been in the last few years. This man it's very difficult to explain to someone with this much knowledge, but I'd probably go with a fountain of knowledge. When it comes to anything in Europe, across Europe, any country, any division, any league, this guy knows it all. And if he doesn't know it, then it's not worth knowing. I'm, of course, talking about the European football expert, Mr. Kev Hatchard. Kev, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm really good. I thought you were talking about Andy Brassel there, actually, but
he does come very close, Kev, I must admit.
I've always said he's the Mourinho to my Villas-Boas, so I'm absolutely happy with that. That's fine with me.
You're in good company there, Kev, I'm sure. So as I've said, at the start here, Andre Onana, this has been going on for quite some time. I think a lot of Man United fans were certainly hopeful anyway that this would be the new goalkeeper. So without stealing your thunder, Kev, take us through why Manchester United have got themselves a new star.
Well, I think he's potentially transformational in terms of how they play, because what they've needed, and it's been obvious since Ten Hag got there, is somebody who's comfortable on the ball in the build-up. And if you look at Onana, that's what he's all about. You saw in the Champions League final for Inter, a big part of them being competitive in that final was the work he did starting attacks and being able to push them up the field. And at times he was halfway between his penalty area and the centre circle, and he's happy to do that. And the guy who helped develop that side of him was Erik Ten Hag. They know each other incredibly well. They've worked together very successfully. And, the temptation is to really focus on the stuff when he's on the ball, and that's very, very important. But is he a good goalkeeper? And the answer is yes. I think he's improved in that regard. I think he is an excellent shot stopper. We always knew that. But I think he is really commanding, and I think he's grown into himself, really. I think the drugs ban really wounded him. The fact that he couldn't be involved at all for a long time with Ajax after taking the wrong medication and falling foul of a drugs test, that really set him back. And you get the sense of a guy that's making up for lost time. So big personality, excellent goalkeeper, and an upgrade on De Gea in the sense that he's a much more natural fit for what Ten Hag wants to do. I do think the way De Gea was treated towards the end was very, very poor. But for me, that underlines that there's still a bit of an amateurish edge to Manchester United at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, to be honest. It's certainly a step in the right direction. As I said, this is a goalkeeper anyway that seems to go from one extreme to the other when compared to David De Gea in terms of his abilities and his strengths and the way he likes to play the game. In your opinion, Kev, what would be the area of criticism, would you say, for Onana in terms of his ability? So obviously with David De Gea, it was very clear to see and quite extreme to see, really, in terms of the lack of ability, shall we say, in regards to playing out from the back and really starting them attacks from the box, if you like. So in terms of Onana, we've got to balance both sides, haven't we? So what can Man United fans almost be wary about if there is anything to his game that is that way?
I think the only element is you just have to get used to the risk taking. He does take risks in possession. That's what he's asked to do. So if you're on board with that, then it's fine. And I think in terms of the other parts of his goalkeeping, I think they were there to see in Inter's run to the final in the Champions League, because they had games that were really tight. They came through ties against Porto. When they went there, that was a really tough game to come through. They managed to see off Benfica, who'd been brilliant in the tournament up until that point. And his goalkeeping was a big part of that. So I do think that side of it is really improved. I think what's interesting is he's a very forceful character in the sense that if you look at the fact that he fell out with Rigobert Song at the World Cup with Cameroon, and that was effectively over the playing style. He wanted the ball at his feet. He wanted to be able to start attacks, bring the ball out from the back, and he was told he had to be more direct, and he didn't want to do that, and it turned into a big row. So, he's somebody who certainly isn't going to back down. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think the thing that's really impressive as well, actually, is when he went to Inter, he wasn't guaranteed to be the first choice, because Samir Handanovic, who'd been their first choice goalkeeper for years and years and years, was there. And he had to start with, they rotated, and then it became clear that Onana was the number one. So I think there you see the force of his personality as well. He saw a challenge, and it was a challenge, and he really rose to it.
And there's an absolutely massive challenge at Old Trafford at the moment as well, to try and get them back to where they feel like they belong. And in terms of Onana, obviously, you've alluded to it a little bit already today, and previously when I've heard some of your work regarding Andre Onana, he's a massive personality, isn't he? And I think almost this little element of craziness is almost essential, isn't it, when it comes to a goalkeeper? In order for them to be successful, they need to have at least one or two screw looses, don't they? But in terms of that personality, in terms of that persona, I think Man United are really sort of victims, if you like, of big personalities not quite going the way they wanted to, because they've failed one reason or the other to sort of channel that into the correct manner in terms of getting the best output of them on the pitch. So how do Man United really go about getting the most out of Onana's big personality and really allowing him to be that big voice in the dressing room?
Well, I think these things tend to work out naturally, really. I think players will respect him from the moment he walks in. He's quite an infectious personality. He's quite easy to like, I think. And what impressed me, actually, was after the Champions League final, and he was there trying to lift players, trying to console players. It must have stung him not to win the biggest game in club football, but he was there with an arm around the shoulder of other players and trying to lift them. And I think that's very important. I think as well, what was interesting about United last season was certainly at the start of the season, there was all this fist pumping with the simplest of defensive tasks. But what you were getting there was them trying to bring that spirit back and bring that motivation to do the defensive basics. And I think he'll just add another layer onto that. I think United are always interesting, because I think that 7-0 at Anfield was still a marker of what can happen to that group, but that's all part of the journey. So even though there are still amateurish things happening in the background, and there's still uncertainty over what's going to happen with the club going forward, I do feel like there are some leadership structures emerging in that squad.
Please tell me, I know you've said right at the start, this could potentially be transformational for Manchester United, but just how transformational could it be? Could Onana, the signing of Onana, and of course, Man United do need strengthening in other areas. I think that's quite clear to see, even from a squad depth perspective. Of course, they're back in the Champions League now, which is going to be a massive priority for all of the players and the coaching staff as well. But in terms of Onana, him coming in, let's say he does, hopefully anyway, really perform at the highest level that we know that he can. How far can this take Manchester United?
Well, he could be one of the top goalkeepers in the Premier League. I think that's clear. I would expect him to be that. I think then it's all about what happens in front of him. So he can start attacks. He can get them higher up the pitch. He can allow them to do tactical things under Erik ten Hag they weren't able to do before. And I do genuinely believe, and always have, that a good goalkeeper is essential if you're really going to challenge for the top honours. And he is that, potentially. I see no reason why he couldn't eventually be named in the same breath as Alisson or Ederson or people of that nature. And then it's about United finding the right structure ahead of him, really. There's been a lot of debate about, do you spend a lot of money on a striker, or do you spend a lot of money on a goalkeeper? I always think, I understand why people are, always focused on strikers. But I think if you haven't got a good goalkeeper, you're going to struggle. And I think what we saw with De Gea was very much a make do and mend situation. He's been a really good goalkeeper. He's not an appropriate goalkeeper for Erik ten Hag anymore. That's just the basic truth of it. The game has changed. Top coaches want certain things from their goalkeepers, and goalkeepers that can take risks and generally get away with them. And that's not really what David De Gea is capable of. So it's not necessarily a decision against him. It's just a decision for a more proactive and comfortable goalkeeper on the ball.
I am really, really excited to see what Andre Onana can bring to Manchester United. And Kev, obviously, we've had a couple of conversations since the time that I've known you, and I mentioned to you that I really wanted to get you on my podcast and stuff. And I do really like to sort of dedicate a bit of time to, almost in an attempt anyway, to try and inspire anyone listening who's chasing their dreams in broadcasting or wants to become a football commentator or anything like that, really. So I just want to spend the next few minutes talking about yourself personally, Kev. I just want to go through really your journey into where you are today. And we'll start off with, is this a line of work that you always wanted to go into?
Yeah, I think from when I was about 13, 14, I'd made that decision that I wanted to work in football. Realized I was never going to play because I'm not very good. So
I can relate to that.
That part of it was never going to work out. And so wanted to be involved. And I had a massive, shows how old I am, massive tape recorder at home. And every time there was a game on TV, I would commentate. And so I would commentate, listen to it back, and kind of develop how I was doing it. And by the time, so that alongside that, I was pestering the BBC. I went to uni to do broadcast journalism, so there was an element, and some guys who came out of the course. You've got guys like Faye Carruthers came out of that course. Mark Scott, who does Match of the Day now. Adam Summerson, who's one of BT's top guys. They all came out that course. So I was doing that, but also on the case with the BBC locally, Radio Gloucestershire, making teas, hanging around, all that stuff. And then eventually an opportunity came up to report on a game, and it was a Forest Green game when they were in the conference. It would have been then, I think, National League as it is now. And so I did that. And then a couple of weeks after, can you commentate? And by then I'd done 200, 250 games maybe on the tape recorder at home. And I could say, yeah, I can commentate. So I did Rochdale against Cheltenham at Cheltenham. And it went from there. So I did a lot of stuff for BBC, but I had to do other jobs alongside it. So I worked in filing. I worked for Topshop. I was at Topshop. That was a crazy experience sometimes at weekends. Very, very busy. So yeah, I did lots of, and then eventually was able to get a job in London for Club Call, which was at the time, again, this ages me horribly, was a premium rate phone line that people rung up for transfer news. We didn't have the internet presence we have now, so it was all you rung up a phone line and listened to recorded messages. And we used to do the kind of stuff we do now, which is talk to agents, talk to other journalists. And I even then was doing kind of the European side of things. I used to cover France a lot then. And so it kind of went from there, and just freelancing, went freelance eventually, got made redundant a couple of times. That's showbiz. And yeah, just opportunities have come up. And if I think about the Bundesliga side of it, that actually came from working for Betfair, because a friend of mine, Alan Dudman, I'd worked with him at Club Call. And when we got made redundant from there, because the internet killed our jobs, he went to Betfair to do some freelancing for them. And he was on the case on behalf of me. Do you need anybody to do football, European football specifically? And then it turned out the day before the season started, their Bundesliga guy had to drop out. He got a job. And so I took that. They said, can you do it? And I said, yes. Always say yes. And from then on, I already liked the league, but devoured every bit of information I could, became their columnist. I was then doing Premier League radio commentary for TalkSport, their international department for Tom Rennie. And a Bundesliga contract came up. and they said, we need somebody to do most of the comms for this. You do Bundesliga, don't you? And I went, yeah. And then we did that. And because I did the radio side of that for years, the guys over in Germany who run the TV side of the Bundesliga's world feed used to have it on a Sunday on the radio, and used to listen. And then when they decided to expand it, they came knocking on my door. So yeah, just stuff that builds and leads. But I think it's a 20-odd year overnight success. It takes a long time to actually get anywhere, but it's worth it when you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you've been fortunate enough to go through experiences and jobs in your career that you've just mentioned there that have are almost at that level that some people wouldn't even dream that big because just how difficult it can be in this cutthroat industry, so we call it. But, you know, I just wanted to sort of talk about, you know, obviously, as I've just mentioned there, you've had so many experiences. You've been fortunate enough to work with some of the biggest companies in the world regularly. There was a time actually a few weeks ago, it might even be longer than that now, in the Talksport office. So I came in and I actually heard your voice that was on air at the time, and I thought, oh, okay, that's Kev Hatchard. And then, as you know, there's obviously several TVs in the office. And I looked at Sky Sports, and you were on Sky Sports as well at the same time. So obviously, it wasn't live; it was already
He gets everywhere.
from a previous recording.
Too much Hatchard, get him off.
They can never be too much Kev Hatchard, let me tell you that for free. But you know, it's certainly something that I think, and I think I've said this to you before, you know, the likes of yourself and also Alex Crook, who works at Talksport, there's just this almost this dying art of being able to feedback information that you get and give your opinion in a way that's not clickbaity, that's not doing it for numbers or hits, but it's just organically entertaining and insightful. And I firmly think that you definitely fit into that category of allowing information to come out, but also to give it that entertainment value. So, you know, throughout all of your experience, throughout all the things that you've gained and earned in your career, we'll start with this question first. If there was any piece of advice you were going to give potentially to a younger version of yourself or anyone, as I said earlier, that's just starting out in their careers, whether it's in sport or journalism in general, or anyone for that matter, chasing their goals and dreams, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think genuine, and I think more of this because I've got kids now, and they're really into reading and have been since they were tiny. And I just think that kind of thing, language and reading, and not even just reading sports stuff, read other stuff, read anything that interests you, but read, because I think that underpins everything you end up doing, because whether it's commentary, whether it's reporting, whether it's writing, even punditry, whatever it is, it's all language and it's all communication. And that, I think a lot of it comes from reading as a kid. And, you know, if people are listening to this at 16, 17 and gone, oh, well, it's a bit late for that. It's not. It really isn't, because, you know, that habit just is so useful in the end, because it just underpins everything you do. I think as well, it's funny, I was talking to somebody recently about this. It's being patient as well. I think there's a temptation now there's so much more football available to people than there used to be. When I started, you know, the idea that you could have Bundesliga, Eredivisie, Serie A, La Liga, and way beyond that, really, available, is just, you know, we just didn't have that. You know, you had some stuff you had La Liga on Sky for a long time, but Bundesliga was few and far between. And really, when I started, it was all about the kind of European nights. So every time there were European games on ITV, that's when the tape recorder would come out and they'll be able to do a game. So that was always mega exciting. But I think because there's so much more stuff, there are more opportunities for people. But I think what you find is that people are, if they do say some, I mean, it used to be Perform, for example. You'd have some guys working for Perform, and we used to do like Argentinian games at 4 a.m. and things like that. But some people, I think, would then think, well, now I should be doing, because I'm a TV commentator, I should be doing ITV or BBC or whatever it happens to be. And it doesn't always work like that. And so the way I look at it still is every year you're in the game is a tick, because, things change really, really quickly. And as I say, rights change and you lose a gig, your face doesn't fit anymore and you lose a gig, things happen. So I think it's perseverance, I think it's patience, and I think it is about that love of language and reading and what have you. And I think with European stuff, I've always been interested in other languages, other cultures, and that allows me to be a part of that.
You obviously have had so many amazing memories, experiences, but is there anyone in particular, for any reason, that sticks out for you in your career as the number one, as the best moment you've ever experienced in this amazing career that you've had so far?
I don't think there's one moment. The big commentaries are always massive. So I did playoff finals at the Millennium Stadium for BBC when Cheltenham got to finals. And that was huge. At the time, that was absolutely huge. That felt like a massive moment. Doing the Classicas live is great. Doing Anthony Modeste's 95th minute equaliser in front of the yellow wall against Bayern in the season just gone was amazing. I mean, the noise, there's loads of little moments like that. Fun, again, part of that conversation I had the other day, actually. Bayern played at Werder Bremen in a cup game, and in the end, it was a cup semi-final. And Bayern were 2-0 up, and you thought, well, that'll be it. That's definitely going to be it. And Werder got a goal back, and you were thinking, okay, maybe. And then Milot Rashica went on this, people won't necessarily believe this, but went on this incredible run, leaving players trailing in his wake, and scored an incredible equaliser a minute after they'd got the first goal. And the noise of the place was absolutely extraordinary. And obviously, you've then got to fight that to a certain extent. But they're the moments, those big goals, those big moments in commentary that you love. But yeah, I've been really lucky. I've had lots of different experiences that I've really, really loved. And I think the thing I enjoy the most, actually, is I've managed to get into this quite unusual position of not being one thing. So I get to do the punditry, I get to do the reporting, I get to do the commentary, I get to do the writing, I get to do the presenting. So that's just kind of happened naturally. So every day is different. So yeah, I'm kind of in a place that's really fun now, where there's lots of different stuff going on.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think that's a great way to sort of wrap things up today, Kev. I cannot thank you enough for the time that you spent, not only giving us the information on Andre Onana and why he's going to be the man to take Man United to win every Champions League now for the next 10 years, but also,
something like that.
Something like that. We'll take a few over the next couple of years. I'm fine with that.